For this project, we're going to use printmaking to make a dessert 4 times, just like Andy Warhol repeated his art. First, we need to make the stamp. You'll need a piece of foam and a piece of paper to draw your dessert on. First, sketch out your dessert. Try and take up as much of the paper as possible. You don't want it to be too tiny. You want it to take up as much of the paper as you can. Make it in the center of your paper and use your space wisely. You only need to draw the lines. There's no need to color this picture because we're going to use this to make our stamp. When you're done drawing your image, it's time to tape it down to the foam. You're going to trace your image so that it goes onto the foam. So we want to make sure it stays in one spot. Put a piece of tape at the top and the bottom of your picture. Next, use a very dull pencil to trace over your lines. A dull pencil won't rip the paper as easily as a sharp one will. So make sure it's not very pointy. Trace over all of your image that you drew and check it every once in a while by peeling up the paper and seeing if you're making an indent on the styrofoam or not. If you're not, you might have to go over it again. I can see an indent there, enough to where I can tell what my picture is. So I'm going to keep going at the same pressure as I am right now. Take your time, try not to rip the paper. When you're all finished, the drawing is no longer necessary. You can keep it if you want to, or you can put it in the bin just in case something happens to your stamp. You can always remake your stamp if you have that original drawing. But now you can see my ice cream cone is on the foam. It's not quite deep enough. If we were to roll ink on top of it, it would fill in all of those indents. So what we need to do is make those indents even deeper. So use your pencil, your dull pencil, and go over all of your pencil lines again. If it leaves lines with the pencil lead, it will not affect your picture when you're finished. Go over every part of your drawing and make sure you're pushing hard but not ripping the foam. Now it's time to print. First thing we need to do is get rid of the extra foam that's around your dessert. So take some scissors and cut all of the extra foam that's around it. You can cut right on the dessert or just around it if you want. I kind of got really close to my dessert. I even cut on the line in some areas. The foam can be hard to cut curves, so you might have to cut it out and then come back in and just kind of cut the scrap as much as you have to into little pieces just to make sure that your dessert stays in one piece. After you're done cutting out your dessert, it's time to start printing. So you have to set up your printing area with a messy mat. Use a piece of construction paper from your teacher to put underneath your prints, and you'll need 4 pieces of construction paper. They have to be 4 different colors. And you'll also need a plate to put your ink on, or a piece of plexiglass. You'll also need a brayer, which is the roller, and then a popsicle stick or spoon to scoop out the ink with. We're using special block printing ink for this project. We're going to start off by using the popsicle stick to scoop out a small amount of ink and putting it on the plexiglass. You don't want to use too much, but you also don't want to use too little. So if you're worried about the amount, ask your teacher. Roll out the ink. Now if you notice when I'm rolling out, it's staying in a nice little strip in the middle, and I want to cover my entire roller. So instead of just going straight up and down, rolling it on the plexiglass, I'm going to go across too. Keep the ink in a nice little runway in the center of your plexiglass or plate. You don't want to cover the entire piece of plexiglass or plate because you're going to spread the ink out too much and it's going to dry out too quickly. You want to keep it in a nice condensed area so that you can keep it nice and wet as you're working on it. Keep making the roller go up and down and across. Do that a couple of different times until the ink is a nice even consistency. If it is too thick in some areas and not in others, then you're going to have a gloppy roller when you go to roll it onto your dessert. Go ahead and roll your roller onto the dessert. If you don't have enough ink, go back to the plexiglass, roll your roller a couple more times, and then transfer some of that ink onto your dessert. Make sure that your surface that you're printing on is clean. So I'm going to move my plexiglass over to the side for a second, and I'm going to take my stamp, put it on top of the paper. Now I could rub that side, but I would move the foam around. So when you rub to transfer the ink to the paper, make sure you rub the back of the paper. It's smooth and you won't catch the foam, it won't move. And make sure you go over every single little spot. Pretend like you're trying to feel where the foam is underneath the paper, like you're trying to find it. Check it to make sure that the ink all transferred, and if it looks good, peel it all the way off. Alright, after you're done with that, set your first print off to the side and start your next one. And I didn't need to add any ink. I had enough still on my plexiglass, so I was able to just transfer some more ink onto my stamp and make a second ice cream cone. Now, after your second print, you probably will need a little bit more ink. Not as much as we did initially, but just a little bit more. Add that to your dessert and print a third and a fourth print. Always check your print to make sure it came out clearly. If it didn't, put it back on your messy mat and rub it some more so that the ink transfers over. Once you're finished with all 4 prints, let them dry. Now it's time to create the shadows. First, cut out each of your desserts. Make sure you cut right on the edge of the dessert. Once you've cut out all of your desserts, pick a size of black construction paper. Try and use the most out of your paper that you can. I was able to use a small piece of black construction paper instead of a large one by arranging my ice cream cones in up and down pattern. Take a white crayon or even a pencil and trace each of your desserts. Once you're done tracing, cut out all of the shadows. Now it's time to assemble your picture. You'll need 4 pieces of neon or colorful construction paper and 1 large piece of black construction paper. First, we'll glue on the big pieces of neon paper. That way we know where to place our shadows and ice cream and desserts. Try to leave a little bit of a black border in between each of the colors so it makes it look kind of like a window, but it'll make the color really stand out. You can use a glue stick or a glue bottle to glue on these pieces of paper. After you've glued all of the 4 squares or rectangles down, start to put your ice cream in place. Do the opposite color on the opposite side of your picture. So the pink is on the bottom right, so I put a pink ice cream cone on the top left. Glue down the shadow first, and then your dessert on top. Make sure you slightly move it to the side so that it looks like the shadow is behind your dessert. Once you've glued all the shadows and your desserts down, don't forget to use a Sharpie to sign your name on the front of your paper.